It is without question that the whetstone is the best sharpening tool available, but they do come with a bit of a steep learning curve. They take some time and effort to learn how to use. So in today's video, we're going to talk about what is the best whetstone adjacent or non-whetstone sharpening tool that I can use and get the best results sharpening my knife. First, we're going to talk about the honing rod. This guy here is a ceramic honing rod. You'll also see steel honing rods. Most of the time, these steel honing rods have those little ridges in them. That's why we recommend for your Japanese knives specifically, a ceramic honing rod is the best option. It is made from about the same material as your whetstone is made from, so it'll be really gentle on your edges and shouldn't cause any damage. Whereas those steel rods with the little ridges in them can actually leave like little microchips in your blade. So try to stay away from those guys. You can still use them, just be really, really gentle when you are. The honing rod is not a sharpening tool, it is a honing tool. Honing just means that you're sort of like realigning, and with these ceramic honing rods, you are removing a tiny little bit of material, but what you're mainly doing is realigning that edge, which is going to make it feel sharp again. Over time though, as you cut with your knife, thereby rolling it over a little bit and then realign it using this honing rod, little bits of steel are going to break off no matter what style of honing rod you're using, and that's going to cause your edge to roll over and just become dull, right? And at that point, no amount of honing on a rod, whether ceramic or steel, is going to do any good for you. You're going to have to actually remove a significant amount of material using a whetstone or another tool to reshape your edge, making it sharp again. So the honing rod is still a very valuable tool to have in your kit, but it is going to be used to maintain the edges of your knives between trips to an actual sharpening tool. Another common issue that plagues the honing rod is profile issues. So chances are when you're using one of these, you're not going to be able to perfectly get the full length of your edge in each stroke, right? You're typically going to contact like right about here. This is one of the most common issues we see from people bringing their knives into the shop to get them sharpened. They have this little like indentation right here from where they're contacting the honing rod every time. So yeah, another reason why the honing rod isn't to be relied upon for sharpening and is just for honing. So the first tool we're going to talk about is the pull-through sharpener. These guys are no good, and I don't really need to say any more, but I will anyways. The main problems with these guys are, again, profile issues, so you're never really going to be able to contact the full length of the edge well or easily, which is going to lead to that little divot again, similarly to what is going to happen on the honing rod. These guys are going to remove far more material than is necessary to get your knife sharp. And that is going to lead to blade geometry issues because you're going to be making your knife real thick, real quick. You're going to develop these like monster shoulders on your blade, which is going to make it really difficult to go through like sweet potato, carrots, anything dense and hard is going to be really tough. There, of course, are different levels to this, right? Like you've got this one that's got like these carbide things in here, which are not great. They're going to, again, like scrape so much material off of your knife. There are like the ceramic ones, which are better, but I would argue are kind of just like a honing rod. So again, you're kind of just honing with those guys rather than actually sharpening. So yeah, obviously there are different levels to these. Some are better than others, but on the whole, I would say try to stay away from these guys. And what you'll notice with all of these is you can't maintain the blade geometry of any knife on any of these tools, and that can be said for this guy as well. So moving on to our next tool. So I don't have one in front of me, but the next tool we're going to talk about is the bench grinder. You know those things, the big wheels with the stone on them? You can get really good ones that are like variable speed, water cooled, but you're spending like $1,000 on one of those things. Most people have a $50 bench grinder at home, and those things are just made to remove material, right? So your kitchen knife, the name of the game is not necessarily removing material really quickly. You need to remove material precisely and in the right, way. And some of the most damaged knives we've ever had into the shop are the result of someone trying to sharpen their knife on one of those belt grinders. Really uneven edges, material missing where it shouldn't be, profile issues. The blades often get way too hot and thereby like cook the heat treat in your knife, and it will be hard to maintain any sort of edge after you've used one of those guys. So yeah, stay away from the bench grinder as well. Okay, now we're getting into tools that are actually not so bad, but do still have their problems. So the first one we're going to talk about is the rolling sharpener. These guys are pretty decent, man. Like you can get a really great edge on your knife with one of these guys. They've got a low small learning curve. You just pop your knife on here and you get going. You just do still have to have an understanding of the sharpening process, right? So make sure you form your burr on one side before you flip the knife over and form your burr on the other side. They often come with 2 grits, right? A low grit and a high grit, so that's all great. They do have their issues though, right? So first and foremost, the height of the blade can impact how effective these guys are. Obviously, if your blade is really tall and this guy isn't tall enough, it won't accommodate the blade. You're not going to be sharpening. So, really tall gyuto or a cleaver. Obviously, this is not a great example because it fits in there nicely. But yeah, taller blades are going to be tough. We had a lot of people comment like, oh, you could just like put a cutting board underneath and that will fix the blade height problem. But again, like you're just getting into like having to come up with solutions to a problem with your tool. So we can't really give great marks for something that you have to, fix. And then the biggest problem with all of these is that you can't fix the blade geometry on your knife, right? You're never going to be able to like thin your knife out. And while Jake and I argued about this a little bit, whether or not you could do any sort of repairs on these guys, we came to the consensus that yeah, you probably could, but it's going to take forever. It's going to be like the least enjoyable experience trying to work a chip out on one of these guys. It's just going to take forever. And then same thing on the tip here, like you could probably fix a broken tip relatively well on one of these guys, but again, it's going to take forever and it's not going to look great, I don't think. So yeah, these guys have their time and their place, right? If you're just doing like a quick sharpening on a knife that's in great condition and you just need to, give it a quick 1-2, nothing wrong with it. You're paying a lot of money for a very small amount of abrasive, so that's another issue with these guys. But yeah, not so bad. We don't have a huge issue with people using these on their Japanese knives, and we get people asking about that all the time, and we say, yeah, go for it, no big deal. Now, a little funny anecdote here. We were getting a lot of people saying like, oh, this guy's just trying to sell whetstones. Like he's been corrupted by the big whetstone industry. And yeah, I'm trying to sell whetstones, absolutely. But you would not believe how many emails I got from Chinese manufacturers when the patent ran out on these guys in North America, asking if I wanted to buy and sell these things. And I just can't do it, man. Like they're not terrible, but they're not a whetstone. So yeah. Okay, so that leads us to our last tool that we're going to talk about, and the best option for sharpening not using a whetstone, which is the rail-guided system. These guys are awesome. They do come with their downfalls, but first I'll talk about why they're great. First and foremost, that they are the best for maintaining the angle at which you're sharpening. You would never be able to maintain your angle as well as you can on one of these as you could freehand sharpening on a whetstone. So that's a major point for these guys. We heard from a lot of people that have dexterity issues in their hands and wrists, saying that they could never use a whetstone, and these guys have allowed them to sharpen their tools. So that's awesome, right? It's better to sharpen your knife using something rather than nothing. And if you can't use a whetstone, this is the next best thing in our opinion. The last great thing about these guys is sharpening like pocket knives and stuff like that. You have to be even more precise with your angles, and working those like sweeping tips is really tough freehand sharpening. So doing your pocket knives on one of these rail guided systems is a lot easier than doing it on a whetstone, and you'll likely get much better results. So now for the downside on these guys. Again, you're paying a lot of money for a small amount of abrasive here. We heard from a lot of people saying like, oh, I can sharpen like so many knives with these guys. And well, I'm sure that's true. It's still never going to outlast a whetstone in my experience. Like the Debato 220 grit, low grit stone is awesome. It wears super slowly, and I think we've sharpened like in the thousands of knives on those guys before they run out. And I can't say for sure, but we do use diamond plates at the shop as well, and they always run out really quick. The first few times you use it, they're super, super gritty and coarse, and they chew away steel. But after a few knives, they lose that really, really coarse bite really quick. So I stand by that. I would say that these guys are definitely more expensive to repurchase all the time than just using a whetstone. And then, like you've heard me say for all the other tools, you can't affect the blade geometry on one of these guys. No matter how flat you set this thing, it's not going to actually thin out your knife. And over time, using this thing over and over and over again, you're going to negatively affect the blade geometry of your knife. It's going to get thicker and thicker, and eventually you will need to thin your knife. Now that might not matter to a lot of you, right? That's like an every few years type of thing for a lot of home cooks. So again, in that scenario, this thing works great. And when it's time to get it thinned, you bring it to us or another knife shop to thin it out for you. So yeah, there you have it, guys. The Whetstone adjacent sharpening tools list. We have in first place the rail guided system. In second place, the rolling sharpener. In the never use place, the pull through sharpener, and in the use between knife sharpenings place, the honing rod. Hope that makes sense. Can't wait to hear why I'm wrong in the comments. Stay sharp.